Hello and welcome to the 8th and final round of the Cycling Ireland Zwift Winter League. It's the final push as we prepare for 5 laps of the Champs-Élysées circuit for a total of 33 kilometres and 195 metres of climbing this morning. I'm joined once again for today's points race by Ronan McLaughlin of cyclingtips.com. And Ronan, it's a final chance for the riders to try and make an impression. For some, the glory of class honours is still in prospect. How's that going to change the way people ride it this morning?
Well, hopefully we see some, really exciting racing, and that everybody just kind of no holds barred, and leaves all the tactics out the window and just get everything for this final round. And there's nothing to lose at this stage, I suppose. We've got a few riders who can move up in the rankings in their category, so they'll certainly be out to make an impression and hopefully take a few extra points today. And then there's other riders who maybe have less to fight for in the overall, but certainly everything to fight for in today's race. And the nature of today's course around the Champs-Élysées kind of makes it fairly open for everybody.
It's a points race as well, of course, and that always changes things a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. We've seen all the points races so far in this league, and it's always been fantastic racing. It's always been exciting. We've never really been able to call what was about to happen next. So hopefully more of the same today. But I do think that the course today will open up for more of the riders to sort of get stuck into that points racing action. The couple of points races we've had before have tended to be on more demanding circuits, whereas around the Champs-Élysées, I think anybody who didn't know the course before last September will certainly know it now, following Sam Bennett's win on the Champs-Élysées. So, I think everybody will be out to try and replicate that today. And we might see, if we get a couple of webcams going in there, we might see a few extra green jerseys or quick step jerseys today than we might have done in other rounds.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of extra motivation for that particular course, no doubt about it. Well, in last week's 7th round in Harrogate, Heather Foley grabbed another win among the A riders, but she was certainly made to fight for it and required a finishing kick to fend off Linda Kelly, with Claire Richardson close behind. Michelle McKinney won Class B, Andrea Lyons was Top C, and Berdine Driscoll continued her dominance of Class D. Among the men, Chris McGlinchey edged a terrific finishing sprint from series leader Matteo Cigala, with Richard Barry third, and all three credited with the same time. Stephen Edmondson reasserted his authority over Class B, Kevin Flynn was out front in the C group, and Donald Galvin was the top D rider. I caught up with Matteo Cigala, who has already made certain of victory in Class A ahead of today's final round. It's a major winter goal achieved for the Meath-based rider.
It was a tough league for sure, and I was able to, of course, start really well with the win, on the first week. And it was a clear objective for me during the winter to try to aim for the overall. Of course, the round that I think for me really has made a big difference in the racing has been the one with beating Chris on 4 days before his World Championship. Like for me, that one was give me a lot of confidence. I knew that I was good, and I knew that I had good numbers, but certainly that day, be able to do all of the sprints every lap and win most of them, and then still do a great sprint at the end. I really pushed me even more for the following weeks, and even now I'm just really enjoying every week racing on Zwift. Zwift takes time to learn. You don't get up there and try to win the first time you go. It just takes time to learn the technique, the all of the trick of the games. It took me, I think, 3 months before I was able to stay in the front bunch and sprint at the end. So for sure, between the COVID restriction and between the time of the year, having the league there every Saturday is amazing. So Cycling Ireland putting it together it's been fantastic. So we are very lucky, and I think not that many federations out there looking at the events that there are on Zwift are actually doing something like that. So it's been exceptional. So I really enjoy it, and of course, it's been a pleasure to have won, and it's something to look for every Saturday, and I look forward to see what Cycling Ireland is bringing up next.
In the league standings, Cigala of the Dan Morrissey team has an unassailable lead in Class A from Richard Barry, while Cian Ryan has work to do to fend off Conor Verbruggen for third. Stephen Edmondson is similarly safe and already celebrating Class B success, while Gregory Gout and his North Down CC teammate Ross Blaney are taking the C-Class battle all the way to the wire. Vincent Morgan of Limerick MBC has a narrow but not yet conclusive advantage over Kevin Walsh in Class D. Among the women, Heather Foley of Maryland Wheelers is the top A-Class rider after 7 races. Michelle McKinney has a winning lead in Class B, Andrea Lyons has a similarly unbeatable lead in Class C, and Berdine Driscoll has won Class D. I spoke to Heather Foley about her closest win yet in last week's penultimate event and the enduring benefits of Cycling Ireland Zwift League racing.
I love going to races where, even with the running races, I like going where there's going to be loads of people that push you. I'm just that kind of person. Like, sometimes I don't care where I finish as long as I know I've got the best out of myself. So and I think that's where another series of it was going to happen. Like, I do think more, there would be more people doing it, and I think people are really getting into it, and they're realizing it is a great race, and it's a great workout as well. And because a couple of girls have asked me, like, even people have maybe they've had children and they're coming back to sport, and they're getting they're doing the training, but they want to get back into a bit of racing as well. And I think sometimes with the men, when you're in with the men, you have that mad start, and you might get dropped, or it just would make you lose heart. Whereas with the women's race, I think that it's all women. You will get a hard race, but to race against women, like at the end of the day, we race against women out in the road, don't we? So why not be doing it? I know we race against men, but we do have to do women's races, don't we? At the end of the day, and I have to say that race on Saturday, I was really tired after that. Like, that was one of the hardest races I'd done. Like, my heart rate was at 182 at the end of it. So that just shows you how hard that pushed me harder than any of the men's races I'd done. So it just provides such good training, and I know it's virtual and stuff, but I think it'll set you up for when things start opening up again on the road, and the road season. Like, it's gonna, people's fitness is really going to be coming up, and it's great. It's going to be a great base for them as well.
Well, the Cycling Ireland Zwift League has demanded maximum commitment and precise attention to detail for all competitors as knowledge has increased and the gap has narrowed between the riders. Fueling for an event of less than an hour might not seem that important, but as Sean Prunty of Connecticut Sports Nutrition told me, maintaining optimum sugar levels during Zwift racing will yield performance benefits.
Their fueling strategies should be in place for any event, and when it comes to the Zwift leagues as well, whether it be a short duration of an event, possibly they don't need to be consuming a huge amount of carbohydrates. A carbohydrate mouth rinse would suffice, which means just taking some carbohydrate solution into the mouth, swishing it around, and not actually digesting or swallowing the carbohydrates itself. And there has been some studies out there to show that there's been a performance effect by doing so. So the duration of the event will play a role in what type of carbohydrates and how much carbohydrates an athlete should take on board. But if it was like a time trial sprint, energy stores would be used up very, very quickly. Blood glucose levels would drop as well, during that period of time, depending on the intensity of the actual event itself. So to have some sort of solution there, whether it be a hydration drink with some of the Connecticut Energy powder, or whether it be one of the Connecticut Energy gels, just to maintain blood glucose levels throughout that period of time of 45 minutes. You're as well off being prepared as opposed to not being prepared at all.
Well, Ronan, just a single chance left in this league to make an impact on the point standings. We're on the Champs-Élysées circuit with 5 tough sprints. It's going to be demanding.
It certainly is. It's a short, sharp blast around the streets of Paris. The laps are relatively short, so there's very little recovery between those sprints. And certainly, to have a sprint on every lap is going to mean that all the riders are going to need to be, paying full attention. And on top of that, they're going to just need to get stuck into the racing. There's no sense in holding back if you're not ready to go from the off here today. You could, if you miss these first 2 sprints, you could be out of the standings for the whole race. So it really will be sort of all guns blazing from the start, and hopefully some really good racing.
You're not in, you can't win. Well, we're now all set for round 8. The riders are now ready on the start line. Their warm-up's just about complete, and they're bracing themselves for the usual fast getaway. Let's see who's entered this final round of the series this morning. And all the heavy hitters have made their appearance, with the obvious exception, we understand, of Chris McGlinchey. We're waiting to see whether Chris has made the entry. If he hasn't, it's certainly going to be interesting fare today. The men's A league has been decided in favour of Matteo Cigala, who is entered, is on the start line. Plenty of riders will see him as he's going to have a big target on his back. Plenty of big name entrants as well among the women competitors. Heather Foley's here to race in the 8th and final event in the Cycling Ireland Winter Zwift League. Richard Barry is there, and hopefully he's dialed in on his webcam as well, and we'll be able to keep tabs on the progress of the Cork rider in his efforts to get that elusive victory today. One or two other riders that are hoping perhaps to see what they can come up with. Barry's away pretty quickly, as you might expect. He knows how to play this, knows all about the intensity. How many riders have told us that their first race on Zwift, they got left at the start line and not able to keep up, and the intensity of the effort was just so difficult to handle. As I mentioned, Cian Ryan sitting in 3rd in the league standings at the moment, but he's got breathing down his neck. Conor Verbruggen from Brave Wheelers, Colm Sheehan as well from Blarney Cycling Club. Both of those riders locked on 390 points, but they've got a 0 to drop. Remember, best 7 from 8 rounds, so there's a little bit of calculation. The beads will be flying on the abacus in Cycling Ireland headquarters to try and work out exactly what the permutations and the computations and the possibilities are for Verbruggen and Sheehan in their efforts to try and get into that final podium position among the A riders. Stephen Edmondson, as I've mentioned, already home and host as well in the B group. John Gibbons and Sean Higgins vying for 2nd place among the B riders. And then the C class honours, well, that's very much up for grabs. North Down Cycling Club look as if they have it between them. Ross Blaney is chasing his clubmate Greg Gout, but he's counting a 0, Blaney, so it's a little bit narrower than you might expect, than the 35-point difference between them on the standings. And then among the D riders, Vincent Morgan, as I've mentioned, very narrow advantage for him over Kevin Walsh, Limerick Mountain Bike Club, going up against Blarney Cycling Club respectively. Let's focus on what's happening up front. Of the format this morning, we've got 5 sprints plus the finish line, with double points on the finish line at the conclusion of these 5 laps.
Yeah, it's a sprint race today here again, and we've seen in the previous rounds that we've had this sort of sprint format that has been very exciting racing, and I expect no different today. We've got, as you were mentioning there, quite a close competition there for 3rd place on the podium. I think both Matteo Cigala and Richard Barry are fairly safe in their positions there, and in fact can't be caught today. But certainly, well, I suppose I'm saying that, but at the same time, should Matteo have a complete dropout and Richard Barry got 100 points, and it would become a lot more interesting immediately. But with that, if you look a bit further down the results there, the lowest placing that Matteo has had in this league is 3rd place, and that just means that he has pretty much he's home and hose pretty much as we say. So it's really at 3rd, 4th and 5th place that we look down the list there at Cian Ryan, Conor Verbruggen, Colm Sheehan, and those are the riders who will not necessarily be out for the win today. Of course, a win would help them, but they're certainly going to be out to place better than their rivals, and that could hopefully make for some exciting racing here.
We're focusing on the A group at the moment. They're away and into action. All the groups at a minute gap between them. The women are all going off together in the final group on the road, 5 minutes behind the start, but of course each group racing for its own points. And keep an eye out, different jersey for Matteo Cigala as well today. He's in his Vitus Pro Cycling kit, which is that's the team that he's competing with online in Zwift racing, alongside and Chris McGlinchey on a regular basis as well. And indeed, Matteo Cigala is ranked 6th in the world, 6th in the entire world in Zwift racing. So he's a very, very highly rated competitor. And indeed, we've got plenty of visiting riders who will be looking to take a chip at Matteo today and perhaps improve their point standings in the overall point standings on Zwift. We're focusing on the points that make prizes in today's final event of the league, and heading towards the first sprint of the day. It's going to come somewhere between 4 and 5 kilometres. 3.2 kilometre lead in to begin the lap, and now we're on those familiar roads heading up the Champs-Élysées on the cobbled. It's a little bit grippy here, so they need slightly more watts in order to make progress. But of course, for the riders on their home trainers, well, it's all about judging the watts versus their other competitors. Cigala, well, Matteo has clocked in, and he is easy to pick out, isn't he? Because he's wearing the same colours on his home trainer that he's wearing on his Zwift avatar, even down to the hairstyle. Very impressive.
Well, not similar colours, yeah, but I can see there he's wearing Team Dan Morrissey MIG Insurance Pactimo kit, which is his road based team. And I think on Zwift here, as you mentioned, he's racing for Vitus, so trust me to pick up on that one.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you're a sort of proud member of the Team Dan Morrissey squad. I know you guys went for a group ride on Zwift during the week, didn't you? A little sort of bonding session just to sort of get psyched up for the road season to come.
Yeah, but much like all those sort of pre-season team get-togethers, it turned into a bit of a beating session more than a bonding session. So yeah, there's a few tired legs coming off the end of that. So there was.
Harder than any Zwift race, yeah. Fair play. That's the only way to assert your authority over the rest and get the kudos, bragging rights, and perhaps some assistance out the road when it comes later on in the year. The while to come before that, we've got some power-ups being played.
Yeah, we're just coming in here to the first sprint.
First gallop.
Like Richard Barry's.
Yeah, he's got a bit of an advantage there, Ronan. You've picked up on that well, and Richard Barry is going to play this one from the front. It's the only way to do it, and he's timed his attack very nicely indeed. Here comes Cigala with a run, but he's over 2 seconds down, and I think Barry's going to get this. Has he gone too early? Well, he's looking like he's in good shape at the moment. They're coming with a run from behind. Cigala still showing it just over 2 seconds back, so nothing between them. Barry it is that takes it, so it's a maximum haul of points. Goes to the top of the point standings, and he's got his retaliation in early, and now he's got control, and now he can track the other riders. Barry from Cigala, visiting riders also showing in amongst there with their Chinese competitors, briefly showing among the top three. Let's get a look at this. There's the points standings at the conclusion of the first of 5 sprints. Barry Cigala, visiting rider from China. Verbruggen scoring well, and that's going to be important for him. Sagers, Pinfield, Higgins, Caulfield, Wilson, and Henry, your top 10 across the line.
Yeah, very early head out there from Richard Barry, and I think he just caught the whole group by surprise. Perfectly timed. It's a slight uphill drag there on cobbles, so by no means the easiest of sprints, and if he can get that gap, it can pay off. It's a risky tactic, go too early and you can blow up just before the line, but it certainly paid off there for Richard Barry in that sprint. But we just have to see now in the coming laps how much of a toll that'll have taken on his legs. It was a big effort there to go from that far out.
Yeah, he really went for the long one, and he knows that that's probably his best tactic, his best chance against a sprinter of the quality of Matteo Cigala. So nicely played, and he's got the advantage, albeit a narrow one, just a single point advantage. Again, I can't say it bears repeating, doesn't it, as we get a look at the next group on the road coming up to the sprint. These the B competitors, I believe, who have just arrived at that sprint. We'll get confirmation of the standings through the line. That sprint, of course, coming close to the Arc de Triomphe. It's a different sprint line. If you're familiar with this circuit, and let's face it, who isn't from Tour de France since 1975, all but 1 year, the finishing stage of the Tour de France has taken place on this circuit. But that sprint line is just a little bit closer to the Arc de Triomphe than the finish line that we'd be familiar with from television.
I think it's now called the Sam Bennett line, isn't it?
Well, officially, yes. In Ireland it is, certainly, and down around Tipperary, Carrick-on-Shore direction. Quick reminder, by the way, we saw just a little snippet of an interview with Sean Prunty from Connecticut at the opening of the programme. I can tell you, I do believe that we're going to be able to catch up with that interview online on the Cycling Ireland Facebook page. Keep an eye out for it. I think that's going up at some stage in the next day or so. Focusing on competitors further back, and not sure, is this the A group I think that we're looking at the moment? Indeed it is. Richard Barry has that early advantage. and it's the right way to play it. Double points at the finish line. That'll be the riders will be mindful of that. That final flourish at the end of 6 tough sprints is going to be tough, as Richard Barry very briefly got aside of him, but it's actually the graphic showing Heather Foley who's out there. Rider out, based in the west of Ireland, from Northern Ireland originally. This is Richard Barry, who's just trying to recover a little bit, and it's a series of huge efforts followed by some possibility to recover. It's a slightly different rhythm to the regular racing that we would see, the regular sort of scratch races.
Yeah, it's it's all about how quickly can you recover after going deep and doing a sprint like that. So certainly it looks like Richard Barry has recovered quite quickly here. He's seeming fairly comfortable there on the webcam, and we can see his heart rate is down at 160 odd now, which we know from previous weeks is relatively low for Richard. We've seen him up as high as 190 odd. So that's what it's all about in these points races, is going super deep in each sprint and then trying to recover as quick as he can before the next one. And it's even more of a challenge this week because the lap is so short around here. It's just 6 kilometers or so, means that there's less time to recover between sprints.
So this is the women's group coming to the sprint. I will remind you that Heather Foley is the standout competitor. They're hoovering up riders from the men's D group, so we're going to see some confusion in amongst those riders as the top women riders, and there'll be sort of an increase in the number of competitors as well for this final round of the league. Perhaps it's the people starting to get the hang of it and the understanding of it, and Heather Foley looks as if she's going to be challenged. Linda Kelly not too far away. Michelle McKinney is also showing, and I'm not sure if Claire Richardson has made the entry list today. We keep an eye out for her to see if she's going to be able to score today, but Heather Foley and Linda Kelly locked in combat once more, and they're going for the line. Who's going to time their efforts to absolute perfection? Is it going to be Foley? Claire Richardson, there she is. She's in the mix. She's out front, and she is now an A-ranked competitor, and she got to be overhauled on the line, needs to get out of the saddle and go for it again, and just pipped there. We'll get confirmation exactly of the finishing order, but Claire Richardson from Ulster has scored well at the first sprint, and we wait for confirmation of the standing. There it goes. It's Wilkinson of Team Canyon, a visiting rider. Claire Richardson, the best of the Cycling Ireland competitors, just ahead of Heather Foley. Linda Kelly in the wheel tracks of Foley. Fambus is another visitor. MJ1 is rider unknown, but is, I believe, an Irish competitor. Michelle McKinney, 7th across the line. Kat Davis scoring well. Can Vark is another Irish registered rider, and Nelson 10th across the line. Single point for that competitor. But Richardson of the Cycling Ireland competitors stealing a march on her rivals there. Nice job.
Yeah, certainly, and it looked like she was just about to take the sprint there. Just got overhauled on the finish line. It shows you the risk of just going that a little bit too early, and the importance of getting your timing absolutely perfect. But I think that first sprint will serve as a good sort of yardstick for the riders to base the sprints on these subsequent laps on. So expect to see more close finishes on these sprints as we make our way through today's race.
Is it realistic for competitors to actually imagine that they are going to score top points at each and every one of the sprints, or do you have to sort of play a tactic to sort of try and recover through a couple of them and then go, target, or do you just simply have to be up for every one of them?
I think it's one of those that if you go for a full-blooded sprint on every single lap, you are going to pay for that effort, and it's going to come back to haunt you, especially coming into the finish line where there's double points. So you might find some riders try to build an early lead in the points here and rack up as many as they can, and then take a couple of sprints where they're sort of say 80-90% effort rather than 100% effort, just to keep themselves up there in the scoring, but give their legs a chance to have that little bit of extra recovery on a lap. And then it really does come down to that final sprint for the finish line, and the double points that are on offer there can undo all your great work earlier on in the race if you miss out big time on that final sprint.
So the men's A competitors are within 1,500 metres of the second counting sprint of the 6 in this event. Final event in the Cycling Ireland Winter Zwift League. Round 8, some of the names to conjure with. Pádraig Ó Flynn has placed himself nicely in the group. Jonathan Caulfield, another competitor we've seen prominent in this league, and others to pick out. Brian Geary, Porrico Flynn, I've mentioned Matteo Cigala, second at the first sprint. Conor Sprice is there as well. Jason Henry, Peter Wilson, Northern Ireland competitors of some standing and some ability, and plenty of other impressive visiting riders as well that are into the mix. Anderson Pullen is a Brazilian rider that is showing towards the front quite a bit. That Chinese rider, his name is well, indecipherable to me at the moment, but there's no question that he's a fast competitor, and he's going to certainly change the tactics a little bit in the way that he is so prominent. It's Pupulin that's going for it. Verbruggen has decided to go for the long run, and this is something he mentioned to us when we spoke to the Bray Wheelers rider a couple of weeks ago, that he's not an out-and-out sprinter, needs to try and steal a march, but it's Barry indeed once more that steals clear of the rest, going for the line. It's going to be another maximum haul. We're seeing Verbruggen's numbers, but it's Barry that has the lead by just over a second, and he gets top points. Verbruggen in between himself and Cigala. That's good news for Richard Barry. Good news for Conor Verbruggen. Cigala has a little bit of work to do.
Yeah, certainly, and great news there for Conor Verbruggen. You know, he's placed highly in both these opening sprints, and that's really going to put him in pole position here to take the final podium spots on the overall standings today. So fantastic opening 2 laps from Conor Verbruggen to really give himself a fighting chance of taking that podium spot. Interestingly, there we can see in 4th place visiting rider Joran Segers, actually a former Ampost Chain Reaction team rider. So he is making a visit here to the Cycling Ireland Zwift League today, and he might be known to some riders watching from his Ampost team days there.
Yeah, I mean, he's honorary Irishman, isn't he? Jan Segers, fair play, and he's very welcome to this event. Richard Barry scoring top points at the second sprint among the men's A competitors. Conor Verbruggen getting up for second, and a useful haul of 9 points in this event. 9 points towards the points total for today. That will translate into a useful overall finishing position if he can maintain this level of consistency through the conclusion of this event. Cigala gets up for third. Segers, as we've mentioned, our Chinese visitor, those 2 riders in 4th and 5th ahead of Porrico Flynn. Jonathan Caulfield getting up for 7th ahead of Jason Henry. Chabert is next up, and Lancaster rounding it out for the final point. That's the men's A competitors through. The Bs will be through very shortly, followed by the Cs, the Ds, and indeed the women are amongst the very fastest of the D competitors. They'll be hoovering up quite a few of the Cs as well, the likes of Foley, Kelly, and Claire Richardson, who's the best placed of those riders through the first sprint. Barry, though, seems he's on fire this morning, isn't he?
Yeah, he sure is. He's come into this last round of the league and he's really going for every sprint here. It'll be interesting to see if he can keep that up for every lap, as we were just talking about prior to that previous sprint that we've seen there. So certainly he's given himself a great chance here. He's putting himself right to the fore, taking maximum points in both sprints. But you know, another key development in that last sprint that we just seen was, you know, Conor Verbruggen getting in there for second place in the sprints, and that really does leave Matteo Cigala with an uphill battle now if he wants to take another victory in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. And you know, that's certainly going to be interesting to watch on the next 3 laps, how this overall standing develops.
It's a flat circuit fundamentally. Couple of little drags in there, and the cobbles will require a few extra watts as well.
Yeah, certainly. But you know, just next time when we come around to the sprint here, it's interesting to watch as they're coming up with Champs-Élysées. You can get a real view for actually how much of a drag up it is to that sprint on each lap. And I wonder, is that having an influence here and giving Richard Barry the upper hand today? And that, you know, Matteo Cigala would be known for being a pretty fast sprinter on the road, but perhaps maybe better suited to flatter running, and certainly kicks up there towards that sprint line. And I wonder, is that just giving Richard Barry the edge today?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether Matteo Cigala elects to change his tactics, whether he's able to. It may just be that the legs aren't quite in it. Certainly Richard Barry looks like he's on flying form today. Conor Verbruggen too is very impressive. The Bray Wheelers cycling club man from Leinster, from Wicklow indeed, is just cranking out 250, 275 watts. It's impressive for many. For a rider of Conor Verbruggen's standing and ability is semi-recovery mode for him. his heart rate down to 149. He's just trying to get the lactic out of his legs, clear those lungs and legs for another big effort to come very shortly indeed. Through the finish line, they've got another 1,500 meters or so after that, and that's the key moment for them. Other groups behind are also competing for their sprints as well. The B, C, the D, and indeed the women's groups all going for the second sprint. We'll keep tabs on how they're getting on when we manage to catch up with them. Through the order, the riders are just spread right throughout this 6.6 kilometer circuit. It's not a long lap, and there really isn't much recovery between these sprints. It's very similar indeed to a track racing effort, isn't it? For all that, it does have this road setting. The way that you ride it is very similar to track racing.
Yes, sorry, I had a bit of break up there, so I didn't quite catch your comment there.
It's like a track race, isn't it? The way that this points race, I mean, it bears repeating, doesn't it? That it is basically like track racing.
Yeah, certainly, and it's your position on the finish line is not irrelevant, because obviously the higher up you finish on the final sprint, the more points you're going to get there. But it's really all about these points that you can score in the intermediate sprints, as we see the women's race here coming up towards another intermediate sprint. And that, again, as I was saying just a bit earlier, how steep that drag is up to the sprint line.
Let's get a look at how the women are competing in this second sprint of the event, with Wilkinson top scorer. She's the visiting rider, British rider with her featherweight. She's using the option that she has. She's launching to try and overhaul Heather Foley. Just about manages to get in front of her at the moment. So it looks as if she's going to take another top score of 10 points. Her emphasis is to a certain extent on the competitors in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. So Wilkinson, well, I'm not so sure even if they could, they are actually looking too closely at Wilkinson, maybe just focusing their attention on the performance of the riders around them in the league, as well as, and there we have it, it's Heather Foley who is being tracked and indeed overtaken. I believe that's Linda Kelly in that pink outfit, who's just about managing to get ahead of Heather Foley. So we wait for confirmation of the finishing positions across the line. Who managed to get that? Well, there you go. Confirmation once more. Wilkinson it was that got the 10 ahead of Heather Foley. Claire Richardson in between Foley and Kelly. So it's a slight change around in the order among the women there. So Foley starting to assert her authority. Claire Richardson scoring well again, so I think honours even between Foley and Richardson after 2 sprints, but we wait for clarification of that. M.J.1 is an Irish rider, anonymous to us, but there's Zwift handle, and there you have it. It's Wilkinson who's maximum haul, but she's a visiting rider. So Foley and Richardson level pegging among the Cycling Ireland Zwift League competitors, and I think it was Kelly on 14 behind, but the graphic just disappeared there. Among the men's group, the men's A list group indeed, focusing on Richard Barry. Double maximum score for him. He's got 20 points. Matteo Cigala on 17 points. He's level with Conor Verbruggen. Both of those riders scoring a second and a third from the first 2 sprints. Jonathan Caulfield, 4th across the line in both of the sprints. He's got 14 points, so just 3 behind Cigala and Verbruggen, and 6 points off Richard Barry. Jason Henry, Porrico Flynn and P. Wilson have also scored well to this point.
Yeah, certainly some close action at the front of in terms of points here, but also just looking back there on Zwift Power at how some of these riders have performed during the week, and perhaps an answer to what we're seeing here, in that Matteo Cigala has actually competed in, if I can get it back up here now, just as I go to mention it, I've lost my screen, but Matteo has competed in, I think, 5 or 6 events since competing in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League last Saturday, whereas a number of the other riders have been active, but maybe not just quite as much, with 1 or 2 races in between to keep their legs sort of ticking over. So perhaps we're just seeing a little bit of perhaps a bit of temporary burnout from Matteo.
Yeah, and he's got to light the afterburners again as we come to the next sprint. They're coming thick and fast, and who's going to get this one across the line? Looks like Barry trying to challenge for that one. Has he managed to get up and get it, or did Chigala just hang on? Looked to me as if Chigala might have just hung on for that one. We're going to see and get full clarification. Indeed it was. Chigala has... he said, no, I'm not going to... I just heard what Ronan said, and that's absolute balderdash.
What's the opposite of a commentator's curse?
Yeah, that worked for Chigala. It was a curse for Barry, wasn't it? But Barry tracking Matteo Chigala. Just 1 point gained by Chigala, but it's going to be significant, isn't it? Chabert is a visiting rider. Sager is another visiting rider, albeit one familiar to us from his on-bus chain reactions days. Conor Verbruggen up for 5th, scoring well again ahead of that Chinese rider in 6th. Jason Henry, 7th across the line. Porrico, Flynn, Malou, Pinfield. Those are the scoring riders with 3 sprints done among the men's A competitors. We'll calculate that and work out, but no question that Chigala, for all that he has competed on a regular basis, 5 races in the week, plus by the way he did that he led the Tuesday Cycling Ireland group ride, which was a VO2 max session, and I did it myself, and it was very hard. I don't know, it was extremely difficult. And Chigala said when I was chatting to him just the other day that well, you kind of have to ride it and take it seriously. You have to put the watts out if everyone else is doing it. So yes, he's a great man to make the efforts. It's turning into a stage race week for him, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly. And you mentioned earlier our sort of midweek team get together for the Team Dan Morrissey team, and Matteo had literally just crossed the finish line in a sprint race and joined the event that they'd set up for the team there. So he's a glutton for punishment. So he is certainly, he's putting all his effort into his Zwift racing. And we've seen, Monday evening there he was racing in this Zwift Premier League race and finished 6th there against some of the against the best Zwift racers in the world, and he's up there himself now, and sitting 6th overall in the world rankings for Zwift is no mean feat, and certainly a mighty achievement. So great to have 2 Irish riders there. I'll call Matteo Irish. That's maybe he won't thank me for that. Maybe he's still Italian, but we'll consider him one of our own at this stage, I think.
He's wearing the tricolore with pride today, isn't he? Yeah, that's what we can say. We have 2 Cycling Ireland licence holders who are in the top 6 of the World Zwift rankings. So fair play, Matteo. Nice effort, job done, but still a little bit of work to do to overhaul Richard Barry, who leads this event overall. We'll calculate the numbers and let you know exactly how they're doing at the moment. But I do believe that it's going to be a 2-point lead now for Richard Barry over Matteo Chigala, with 3 of the 6 sprints completed. They'll have 2 more at the sprint point, then they have the finish line, which around about from that 5th sprint through to the finish line is around about sort of 4 to 5 kilometers. And of course it's double points on the line, so everything can change at that final sprint of the day, and they've got 2 in between that. So the long way to go in what is a very short race, but all those riders trying to recover, and that's a thinned out group up front. We've got around about 19 riders at the front of the race now. It really has been whittled down into a select group of superstars. Pupulin is the Brazilian rider who likes to ride on the front. Maybe he's treating this more of a training session than anything else.
Yeah, and the interesting thing now is the group does get whittled down more and more each lap. It means that there's actually less recovery for those in the front group, and that when the riders going for the sprint take off for the sprint, you have no option but to follow them very closely, or you could find yourself off the back of this group. And we all know how difficult it is to get back onto a group on Zwift once you've been tailed off. So by indirectly now, whether riders want to sort of save their legs for the final sprint or not, they're going to have to at the very minimum follow their rivals quite closely in the sprint to avoid the risk of getting sort of ejected out of this group.
Yeah, it's a very narrow or a very small number of riders that are involved. 23 indeed at the moment, just to fully confirm it. Brian Geary is towards the back of the group trying to recover. So too is Matteo Chigala. He knows how to play it. Joran Sagers, Anton Muzikin is a visiting rider from Eastern Europe. Peter Wilson is our Northern Irish rider, has been scoring well. David Bradford, someone called the Undertaker, not sure who that is. He'll try to be the overtaker when it comes to the finish line. Who else is up there? Porrico, Flynn, been scoring well. Grant Fondista, Yazuki Kobayashi from Japan. Hans Chabert is actually a rider from Belgium. And Richard Barry, we've mentioned. Jonathan Caulfield, Conor Verbruggen, and some of other visiting riders. Quick update on the points. Here's the situation. We have got 3 sprints of the 6 completed. Richard Barry is leading, but with a narrow margin of just 2 points. 29 points against 27 for Matteo Cigala. Conor Verbruggen still solid in third, albeit 4 points off Richard Barry. But he's ahead of Jason Henry, and he's got quite a decent advantage indeed. It's an 8-point lead in that battle for third. Conor Verbruggen ahead of Jason Henry. Jonathan Caulfield next up, O'Flynn and Wilson. And among the women, it's Heather Foley and Claire Richardson locked in battle on 19 points apiece, with Linda Kelly now 3 points in arrears with 2 third-place finishes on the line. Michelle McKinney has also scored well at the first sprint. Not sure if she got up at the second one.
And just looking there, I had a quick look on Zwift Power as well, and both Linda Kelly and Heather Foley have been either training or resting since this day last week. They haven't raced at all in the time in between there, whereas Claire Richardson had 2 race outings during the week. So again, just another thing to keep in mind as we get to this sort of. It's been a long league at this stage. We're on the 8th round today, so perhaps some tired legs coming into these final sprints as well that we might not have seen in other rounds. So still certainly everything to play for here.
Yeah, it's a black art, isn't it? Working out, rest and recovery. How much workload can you sustain, and what sort of effect? Some riders benefit from lots and lots of riding, lots of racing. Others need the rest in between, and they're not thinking about that right now. They're going for the 3rd sprint of the morning with Heather Foley just trying to pick up the right wheel, pick up the perfect position. Watch out for the visiting rider as well, who's Wilkinson, who's also surely to be in the mix here. Linda Kelly on the front is going for glory. Michelle McKinney in the mix as well. It's Linda Kelly in the pink that is trying to hold off Heather Foley in that magenta coloured jersey. And it is the rocket-like visiting rider Wilkinson who just charges clear, has bike lengths of an advantage. I will remind you though, she's not in contention for Cycling Ireland Zwift League points, so it's bragging rights here among her. So Claire Richardson with the pink helmet is the in-between, so the 3 rivals, 3 top riders among the women, and it's incredibly tight, really close for that 3rd sprint. Who got it? Was it Foley just about managed to time her effort, or did Richardson manage to hang on?
Looked to me like Richardson might have just taken that. Yeah,
we wait for the confirmation. Wilkinson, who got the top 10, of course, and then it was indeed, as you say, Richardson and Linda Kelly, who managed to hold off Heather Foley. So there's a little bit of a swap around in the points there. And the men's A group coming not too far behind. We'll update you as to the situation among the women as we calculate that. We're now looking towards the men's A group as they get set for their next sprint. It's the 4th of 6 sprints. Who's going to time their effort? The legs will be starting to get a little bit tired at this point, and it's all about timing the run. They're through the finish line, heading for the sprint line, up that long drag that takes them up to the Arc de Triomphe. Cigala it is who goes for glory, and he's starting to assert his authority over the rest. Maybe the lactic, he's managed to clear it out of the legs after all the efforts he's made in recent times. It is Cigala that has an advantage, approaching a second. It's many bike lengths, and it's a second and a half over Richard Barry. Barry is going to be second across the line at best at this point. There's no doubt about it. Cigala can ease up on the run to the line and take that next sprint. So it's another maximum haul for Matteo Cigala. 2 maximum hauls each for Richard Barry and Cigala. And who got up for second? Well, Sagers put himself in between Caulfield and Barry, only 4th across the line. That could be significant for Bruggen, Chabert, Kobayashi, Chinese rider, Malou and Henry. That's your top 10. Those are the top point scorers, and Gary Nugent is working furiously at Cycling Ireland headquarters to calculate the positions between the Cycling Ireland competitors, and he'll give us an update. The overall points standings, including all of the visiting riders at the moment, is Cigala with a single point advantage over Richard Barry. Sagers next up, some distance removed, 8 points down on Cigala. Barry and Chigala, just 1 point between them, but that was a useful one. That was a good one for Chigala.
Yeah, it sure was there, and we just seen, he went very early, but once he realised that he had the gap, he was happy enough to manage the sprint there. He didn't empty the tank the whole way to the finish line. Once he had the gap up around 1.5 seconds or so, we just seen his watts per kilo there sort of drift downwards, and that was. I don't believe that was that he was fading there. I think that was just that he was managing his effort and saving as much as he could for the next sprint. He had that one pretty much sewn up, so the idea is here is to expend as little energy as possible and still achieve as high a result as you can in each sprint.
Just inside 11 kilometres remaining of the 36 in total, in actual fact. I think it was advertised as 33. Of course, we were forgetting the 3.2 kilometre run into this event, but well, all adds up to a lot of pain and suffering. So far, it's been a very productive day for Vitus Pro Cycling's Matteo Chigala, and also give a shout out to Team Dan Morrissey. That's the gear he's wearing. The blurry shot, or maybe it's blurry orbs that I'm looking with. I wasn't able to pick out his colours, but wears with pride on the road the Team Dan Morrissey colours, and he'll look forward to racing on the road a little bit later in the year. But meantime, we've got a lot of indoor racing, Zwift racing, and it's been a fantastic initiative. And a quick reminder as well that we will have a series of one-day events starting next Saturday, same time, on a series of courses, and we're going to have some handicap racing, and I think that's going to be a really interesting innovation, Ronan. The handicap element, I know, is something that you've been quite an advocate for.
Yeah, certainly. It's been difficult to try and give every race here its airtime that they all deserve because of the nature of the racing that we've had so far, with each group going off separately. But the handicap racing that we're going to see in the coming weeks should really make for some exciting racing, and that it'll be up to each group to give their absolute best to try and stay away from the chasers, or if you happen to be in the A group, catch those groups in front of you. And it could mean that we've got some very exciting racing, and it will also mean that we'll get to see much more of the riders who are taking part here on a weekly basis, and see much more racing on our screens.
Yeah, well, not all of the events are handicap races, but several of them are. So if you want to check out the details on cyclingireland.ie during the week, you'll find out exactly what the formats are. But Australian Pursuits, competitor-paced CP events, call them what you will, you'll be racing in your group, and the Ds will be followed by the Cs, will be followed by the Bs, will be followed by the As. So the superstars will be coming with a rush and a late run. There's every chance indeed that a rider from any one of the four groups could take overall honours in those handicap races. It's a different format, a very popular format. Everybody's familiar with it from league road racing, club league road racing, and it's always a popular one. So we look forward to that over the next 5 weeks. Meanwhile, we focus on Richard Barry and his efforts to hold off and fend off Matteo Chigala. Well, I can tell you the calculation has been made among the Cycling Ireland riders that are in there. It's always a bit confusing when we've got visiting riders that are hoovering up points, but we've made the calculation, and the situation is that Richard Barry and Matteo Chigala are actually locked on 37 points apiece. It's a 5-point margin over Conor Verbruggen, who sits in third. Jason Henry is a further 9 points back in fourth place at the moment. Jonathan Caulfield level with Jason Henry in fifth place, and then in seventh we've got Porrico Flynn. Peter Wilson is eighth. That's the situation as it currently stands. But actually, Richard Barry and Matteo Chigala, nothing to choose between them, but Barry might be a little concerned at the fact that it's been Chigala at the last two sprints.
Yeah, and perhaps more concerned with his own positioning, and that we've seen him come out of the blocks very, very fast, taking the opening two sprints, first in both of those, and then he was second in the third sprint and third in the fourth sprint. And is that just a sign that maybe the legs are just tailing off a little bit? It'll be interesting to see now. We're coming up to another sprint very shortly, and just how Richard Barry can place in that sprint. If he can get the jump again that we've seen him get on the first two laps and score maximum points again, then he would have to fancy himself on the finish line as well. But should that trend of the sort of declining positions continue, then it could get awfully worrying here for Richard Barry awfully quickly.
Well, His race face is certainly well in evidence there, isn't it? Richard Barry is showing the pain and the efforts that he's making. He's being tracked by Matteo Cigala. Cigala just a few bikes behind him, but it's Barry that is going to place himself at the head of affairs. I'll remind you, we're about 2.5 kilometres from the penultimate sprint of the day. 10 points on offer for the first rider across the line. Then we've got a run of about 4 to 5 kilometres to the finish line, which will offer 20 points to the first rider across the line, and indeed 18 for second, 16 and so on down through the top 10. So that should be an opportunity for a little further spread between them, and if there are any riders in between the leading riders as well, there could be quite a significant swap around in the situation at the head of the point standing. So will these riders go full bore, absolutely flat chat for this penultimate sprint, or will they try and save a little bit?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question at the moment, isn't it? It's very hard to predict here from the vantage point that we have, and certainly I think with the sort of trend that we've seen from some of the riders, it's not just Richard Barry there, but also Conor Verbruggen. We've seen his results in the sprints decline over the last couple as well. So certainly those riders are going to have to try and keep themselves in contention. And if they should slip any further back, it could be curtains for their chances of the overall win today.
So a couple of riders have detached themselves from the rest of the women competitors as they come up to their penultimate sprint. Sorry, they're indeed their third sprint, waiting for confirmation. It is indeed Heather Foley that has gone clear with the visiting rider Wilkinson, the British rider from the Canyon squad. And Foley, I think, will be satisfied with that position, putting a little bit of daylight between herself and Claire Richardson, and indeed Linda Kelly, who bested her at the most recent sprint. So change in tactics from Foley.
Yeah, and this is almost a perfect scenario. We're not quite sure on what the gap back is to the chasers, but for Heather Foley, if the gap is significant here, this is perfect, and that she can happily let Wilkinson take the maximum points if she wants to save her legs and ensure this breakaway can stay clear to the finish, which would be much more beneficial to her in terms of all the points that she could wrap up both in the intermediates and on the finish line.
Yeah, they're through three sprints at this stage. This is the fourth sprint of the day. We're waiting for full confirmation of the standings following the third sprint, but suffice it to say, this is a big advantage, big opportunity here for Heather Foley. Wilkinson is tracking her rival. Her entire focus is on just taking the victory today, so she's just going to think about just clipping around Foley. Foley has a different agenda here. She wants to put daylight and put distance between herself and the others. Not so much that makes any difference. It's only about, you still only get the points advantage. Let's focus on this penultimate sprint of the day. For Richard Barry, he's gone clear of the rest. He's got a 2.5 second advantage. What it's showing is Verbruggen up the road. Here comes Cigala on Barry, and he's going to get him. He's going to ambush him on the line. That could be significant. Cigala it is who gets up to get ahead of Richard Barry. Verbruggen was a rogue graphic indeed, and he's actually slipped behind. So Cigala ambushes Richard Barry, who went for the line early, continued his tactic, but Cigala seems to have figured that one out. There's Claire Richardson among the women, getting up to go third across the line at their fourth sprint of the day. The men are through their fifth sprint, and it is Cigala that's taken another top score, another point gain. So there's just 1 point between them with one sprint left.
Yeah, and Richard Barry had to try that tactic there. He had to go early, try and catch the rest by surprise, but we didn't quite catch it on our screens. But it seems like Conor Verbruggen tried to go even earlier and even catch Richard Barry by surprise, but just faded as they came towards the line there. And we've seen Matteo Cigala come from behind both of them and take the maximum points there.
Your overall standings on screen are showing 47 for Matteo Cigala and 45 for Richard Barry. We believe that when the visiting riders are removed and the recalculation is made for the Cycling Ireland riders, it's all super complicated. Stop me if you're getting confused. Getting confused myself. But basically, we believe there's a 1 point difference between them. The Cigala has just a 1 point margin. There are 20 points on offer at the finish line and 18 for second place. It could not be more finely posed. If Richard Barry manages to head Matteo Cigala at the finish line, I think he's going to take it.
Yeah, certainly could. And the interesting thing here now is that this next sprint will be in a different location from the sprints that we've seen so far. So we've seen all the intermediate sprints at the Arc de Triomphe end of the Champs Elysees, whereas now when they come into for the finish this time, the sprint will be just after that left-right sort of S-bend that we have that brings us onto the Champs Elysees, and the finish is actually quite early once they get onto the cobbles here, so it could catch a few by surprise. A lot of riders might be expecting the finish line to be right up at the sprint point, but it's almost as soon as they come onto the Champs Elysees here for the final lap.
One sprint left for the men's A competitors, two for the women. We're working out the point standings between Heather Foley, Claire Richardson, Linda Kelly and Michelle McKinney, but looks like Foley is, I think, just about a point clear of Claire Richardson. It's all very, maybe just about, well, there you have it. There's the situation among the women. Wilkinson it is, who has a 6-point lead over Claire Richardson. Wilkinson not registered for the Cycling Ireland League, so it's Richardson that has that advantage over Heather Foley. A single point lead over Heather Foley. Linda Kelly has slipped a few points back at this point. MJ.J.1's catchy name. In 5th place at the moment, Michelle McKinney, Kat Davis, Can Varuk, Van Boost and Vermeulen, few visiting riders in there amongst the Irish competitors, but it's very tightly and it's close. It's great to see the battle among the leading A women indeed, because Heather Foley had it all to her own for many rounds of this league, but since Linda Kelly arrived and since Claire Richardson has been elevated to A class standard, it has become altogether more interesting, and Heather Foley said she really welcomes it. It's fantastic to have the competition.
Yeah, I think all these competitors, it's looking from the outside in, you might suspect that it would be nice to have a nice cushy run through each race and take maximum points on a weekly basis. But I think all the competitors out there, they like to keep it interesting. They like to have a rival pushing them to their max, and certainly we're seeing that here today, and both, or not even both, but all the races and all the categories here today.
Down to the final 2.5 kilometres with Richard Barry putting himself in prime position. He wants to try and ride in the wheel tracks of the others for as long as possible, but stays close to the front. Chigala, by contrast, just working his way up through this group of 17 riders now. So we've lost another couple of riders from that lead group. It's fairly thinned out, hasn't it, despite the fact that it's fundamentally a flat course. Just the level of power that these riders are able to generate. Down to the final 2 kilometres. Remember, 20 points on offer for the first rider across the line, 18 for second, and there's just 1 point between them. Chigala 1 point ahead of Richard Barry. A little bit of daylight back to Conor Verbruggen, who looks very much as if he's going to finish third today. And I think he's got a great chance of moving up into third in the overall point standings. And Richard Barry is in a handy position here. We hear actually that Heather Foley has actually managed to latch on to the best of the men's riders that have overhauled her. So this could be a useful advantage indeed for Heather Foley if she's is dragged clear of the rest. That's just the way the game works, isn't it? She's been overhauled and she's not doing anything wrong, and that she needs to get some watts out to stay with these riders through to the finish line, and then she'll be riding solo once more as they stop and she continues on to complete the lap. We won't focus on that now. We'll think as they come through the tunnel and out and emerge back out onto the Champs-Elysees. It is just the left right flick to come, and then the straight line to the finish line, so it's not far away now for Richard Barry, for Matteo Chigala, for Conor Verbruggen and the rest.
Certainly isn't, and you can see the riders now fighting for position. Some of the power outputs here ramping up through the roof almost, just to try and get themselves into position as we come in onto there's no actual kite there, but we are inside the final kilometre of today's race, and this final sprint is going to be the deciding factor in today's race. Who can get maximum points and who can go away with the victory today?
Well, once more, the situation is repeating itself with Richard Barry just in front of Matteo Chigala. Chigala's positioning has been exceptional in the last couple of sprints. Richard Barry trying to go for a long one last time of asking. Didn't quite play out, and it is Chigala that has that single point advantage as we go through the final left-right flick. If we were out on the road, of course, they'd be elbows flying to try and get control of the front of the group through this final right-hander, but it's not technical and not difficult in those terms for these riders. Now we're in the final run to the line, just 300 metres remaining of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, the Winter League, and who's it going to be? Will it be for Richard Barry? Will it be Matteo Cigala, who has got that featherweight option? Is it the one to have? And I don't think there's a power-up available for Richard Barry. A lot of them have riders at the front have saved something for the final push to the line. It's Cigala that is just about going to be overhauled by one of the visiting riders, but he's going to score ahead of Richard Barry, and that's the significant moment. It's Cigala that takes the points that will rubber stamp his position at the head of the standings, and I do believe we'll have it confirmed very shortly that Matteo Cigala, the champion, the series champion, has produced a champion's performance, and he has taken the final event. Let's wait for full confirmation of the standings as they went across the line.
Yeah, and from what I could see, we had both Jonathan Caulfield and Jason Henry there in between Matteo Cigala and Richard Barry on the line, so it'll be a clear overall win in today's race and the overall standings for Matteo Cigala.
Another series victory for Matteo Cigala at the end. There were quite a few points between himself and Richard Barry, who is second of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League competitors. Chabert is a visitor, as indeed is Joran Segers, and it's Conor Verbruggen that will be ranked third of the Irish riders at the conclusion of today's activities. Jonathan Caulfield, fourth indeed of the Irish riders. A couple of visitors in there as well, and Jason Henry is the next ranked Cycling Ireland competitor of the A group. Still the BCs and Ds to finish, and we'll focus our attention on the activity among the women competitors and what indeed has happened to the women competitors as a result of being overhauled by the men and drawn along for a little while at any rate by that group were the top two riders who've separated themselves from the rest. It is indeed Heather Foley on the front and Wilkinson, our visiting rider from the Canyon squad, as they go to their penultimate sprint of the day. And once more, Wilkinson is not in any way challenged by Foley. I'm not sure Foley at this point is even focusing too much on Wilkinson. She probably knows she's not able to challenge her, and even if she were, she probably wouldn't see any value in it. Her entire focus is on trying to stay clear of the rest. Claire Richardson was best of the rest last time we saw, and Michelle McKinney and indeed Linda Kelly had been scoring well as well.
Yeah, but we've just seen here that in the sprint, by either choosing to or not being able to follow here, Heather Foley has let a significant gap open to Wilkinson, so perhaps could find herself now on her own to trying to survive these final 5 kilometers with I'm not sure of the exact gap to the chasers, but perhaps with finding themselves in the middle of the men's final lap there and the high speeds that would have been that would have been achieved there, perhaps they've got quite a significant gap here.
Yeah, it looks, just trying to eyeball it, as if they've got maybe a good 10-15 seconds, probably more than that indeed, for Foley over the next of the Irish League riders, with Richardson and Kelly locked in combat.
Yeah, it looks like we just see a gap here on our screens now, and it looks like 50 seconds has opened up. No, that graphic's actually incorrect there, sorry.
It's a lot. It's it
is a lot, yeah.
Well, it's Kelly that gets up for third in this situation on the line. That's second of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League competitors, just about managing to edge Claire Richardson on that occasion. But Foley, not afraid to ride on her own. She is, of course, a former national road race champion, but also a top duathlete, top triathlete, and an awful lot of her best efforts and her best performances have come while riding alone against the watch. So she'll look forward to these final 4 or 5 kilometers or so. That's the situation. Another 10 points taken by Wilkinson. The overall standings, Wilkinson's home and host at this point, 8-point lead, and she's clear of Heather Foley. Foley in turn is clear of Claire Richardson, but just 1 point between them. It really is nip and tuck, and Foley needs to be sure that she's able to measure her effort through these final kilometres. Should Richardson get back to her, well, you wouldn't bet against Richardson, so it's going to be a little bit of a time trial, a little bit of pursuit race now through the last few kilometres.
Yeah, but I think the gap there did seem significant enough that she could perhaps hold on this final lap, and I think this is almost a bit of a celebratory lap or a victory lap for Heather Foley. You know, having taken the win in every round that she's turned up to in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League this winter, she's now on her own coming in towards the finish on the Champs-Élysées, and perhaps just imagining what that might be like to do a celebratory lap on the Champs-Élysées.
She is overhauled by some men's competitors that are still riding around there. So he does, according to our graphic, she was showing with an advantage of over 50 seconds on Claire Richardson, and running about there 13 seconds behind Wilkinson, the race leader. That was the last information that we had. 12 seconds indeed. So if anything, Foley is starting to edge a little bit closer to Wilkinson. So she's managing to maintain the tempo, maintain the effort, and clearly is in control of her effort at the moment. And indeed, it would appear as if Kat Davis is now the next Irish rider on the road. Not sure what happened to Claire Richardson. Well, that could be just a graphic glitch. I'd be surprised indeed if Claire Richardson has disappeared from our screen. We do sincerely hope that. Oh, well, yes, we are still getting information. So yeah, she is. Her internet is working, and she is still pushing hard to try and get on terms with Heather Foley, who has a little bit of work to do. But it'd be a significant achievement, wouldn't it, if she manages to score 7 maximums, because that'll mean she has got the maximum possible score in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, and that's a great tribute to her. She didn't have a lot of opposition in the earlier rounds, but she has been presented with some headaches today, and she's answered every challenge.
Yeah, she sure has, you know, and that's regardless of the opposition in opening rounds, I suppose you can only really beat the competitors who turn up on any day, and Heather Foley has been there week in, week out, and always been on form as well, and that's no small achievement either. Like, being able to be on that sort of form week in, week out over the course of 8 weeks, 2 months, with a Christmas break in between there is by no means easy to manage that sort of condition over such a long period of time. And we see her now coming in just into the final few kilometers, and power very stable there, heart rate very stable. She seems very, very much in control and almost time trialing her way to the finish line here today.
Yeah, heart rate 176. Certainly it's not easy, but it is in control of the effort. Just to confirm the final standings amongst the men's A competitors in the Cycling Ireland Winter Zwift League, Matteo Cigala confirmed his status with another great and resounding victory today. He took 4 wins from the 8 rounds. Richard Barry took a victory in round 2, and he's confirmed in 2nd place. And Conor Verbruggen, as we had speculated, got up to overhaul Cian Ryan and get up into that final podium position, the Bray Wheelers man, with a very useful podium finish today, finishing in 3rd in the league, just ahead of Cian Ryan. Colm Sheehan next up, ahead of Chris McGlinchey, indeed, who wasn't scoring today. Alan Glendinning and Jason Henry also to the fore among the men's A competitors, as Heather Foley plunges down the precipitous little descent into the tunnel, and will emerge back up into the daylight within touching distance of the finish.
Yeah, not far to go here now, just into the final kilometre here, just after we go around this bend, and it'll be I think she's pretty much safe of taking this 2nd position on the day, best ranked of those riders registered for the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, and as such another victory in the league.
Yeah, looks like Heather Foley's going to get the maximums, or at least she's going to get the 18 points here. She's going to finish 2nd to Wilkinson, the Canyon rider, who is showing at 17 seconds up the road. So a bit on before Wilkinson goes across the line to take the final haul of points. It's 20 on the line available for Wilkinson. There'll be 18 points for Heather Foley, 16 for the next rider up. And I can tell you, we've got several riders together. We've got Linda Kelly, Claire Richardson, and the rider from Northern Ireland, MJ1, are all showing at about 50 seconds down on Heather Foley. Michelle McKinney is a further 7 seconds in arrears, and then a bit of a gap back to the rest. So Kelly and Richardson are locked in combat. A little bit of a scrap there for second. Is it going to be confirmed that that will be enough for Foley? I believe it is. We're still waiting for the full confirmation of the standings among the Cycling Ireland Swift League competitors, but I think it should be enough for Foley to be confirmed with the victory today. But it'll all go down to the beads on the abacus as Foley makes her way through the final bend and into the final 350 meters. Wilkinson is pretty much home and across the line at this point, and Foley is going to be the next to complete and will get the 18 points on offer. Foley still well north, indeed, 250 watts or so, but she knows at this stage that she can coast to the line and she's guaranteed those second place points. Super job done by Heather Foley, former national road race champion, the reigning duathlon champion of Ireland. Just ambushed on the line by riders from the men's groups, but it's Foley confirmed that she gets the second place. Now let's focus on who's going to get third place points here. Is through this final bend, and that was the gap between them, 300 meters on the road, translates to about 20 seconds or so. Claire Richardson in the pink. Sorry, yeah, she's actually in that pink helmet, purple jersey. Linda Kelly just behind her is the pink-clad rider. And it's Claire Richardson that lays the watts down and has a little bit of an edge on the rest. Is it going to be enough to hold off Kelly? Indeed it is. And that could be significant in getting that second place on the day for Claire Richardson. So that's it. The leading women just coming to the line. Michelle McKinney just, 5 or 6 seconds behind this group. So within touching distance, extremely competitive fair. McKinney, the leading B-class competitor, and she's been a class above indeed amongst the B-class riders, particularly since Claire Richardson was elevated to the A standard. There you have it, the overall point standings with Mary Wilkinson, the visiting rider, getting that to win by 8 points from Heather Foley, the leading Cycling Ireland Swift League competitor. Just a single point ahead of Claire Richardson. Little to choose between them. Linda Kelly, fourth and third on the day among the Cycling Ireland Swift League competitors. Michelle McKinney in sixth overall was the leading B-class rider ahead of Kat Davis. Canvaru, Vermeulen and Bamboost also scoring well today. Good solid job done by all. We wait for full confirmation of the final league standings, but it's been a great morning in Paris. Some superb fare, great victories from Matteo Cigala and indeed from Heather Foley among the A-class competitors, and great competition amongst the B, Cs and Ds. We'll be back next week for the first of the one-day races. Look forward to some of that handicap racing. It's going to be superb entertainment. Please do plug into the various online activities from Cycling Ireland during the week, and as I say, we'll be back next week. From myself, Declan Quigley, from Rona McLaughlin, I'd like to say thanks very much for being with us throughout these 8 weeks. We've got a little bit more racing to come, but for now, it's goodbye.